Bri McKoy. I am so excited you're here on For Real, the inaugural episode of season 3. Thank you for being here.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I feel so special.
You are very special. Even if you hadn't been the inaugural episode, you are still special because of Jesus.
Yes.
Okay. It's so good to talk to you. I can see you're in your home as a fellow Midwest girl. I'm in Iowa, and I believe you are a Missourian, St. Louis. I mean, newly. You didn't grow up there.
No, we've been here for a year now.
Okay. Tell me about that.
We love it, which is so interesting because we've lived in California, DC. We've been all over the place, but not really like the Midwest.
Yeah.
Well, is Colorado the Midwest? I grew up in Colorado.
I feel not-ish. I feel like Nebraska is the end of that, but I don't know.
No, I think you're right.
It's not the plains. Colorado's not plains.
No.
But St. Louis is definitely Midwest, and you like it. It suits you.
Gosh. It's so great. The people are so lovely. The food here is so good. I love it. I love it.
I think we need to just camp there for a second. I was in St. Louis earlier this summer and was gobsmacked by how many fantastic restaurants there were. I'm sorry to not have known that St. Louis is such a great restaurant scene. You're finding that too.
Oh, I had no idea. When I told people that we were moving to St. Louis a year ago, literally every single person said, you're about to go to like foodie heaven. And I was like,
well, they did. They knew.
Oh, yeah, they knew. They knew. Well, it was people who lived here. People were like, oh, you are. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, that's just not something I knew about the arch.
Right. Totally. I know about the arch as well, but that's about all. Mm-hmm.
I was like, people aren't like, you hear about people traveling New York or California or even Texas for like really good food. And St. Louis, you all, it's not hidden anymore. We're talking about it.
Yep. You've outed them. It's a great space. It's a great place to be. We walked around Wash U. It was a beautiful summer night. It was so beautiful. I kept thinking, why have I not been here more often? So kudos to you. You picked a good place to live.
Thanks.
So here's my very first question for you, Bri. You call yourself an accidental home cook, and I want you to talk to me about the accident in accidental.
Oh, yes. Very, very shocking and surprising that I have released a cookbook. 26-year-old Bri would be like, that's not my path. That's not my dream.
Yeah.
I just did not learn to cook, and I never wanted to learn to cook, which is interesting because my mom and like every woman behind her, amazing cooks. Like I grew up with some just delicious homemade meals every day. And I loved the eating.
Yeah.
The eating was...
To be clear.
Yeah, to be clear, I was like, this is great. I love the eating part, but I just never wanted to do the cooking part. And then as a newlywed, kind of figuring out like, eating out every night is so expensive. Like it adds up so fast.
It sure does.
And I was like, well, what do we do here? Like, I was just like, what do we do? Who's going to come feed us?
I mean, I don't have a lot of ideas, but I'm just saying this is probably going to have to change.
Yeah, this is not a great.
Do you have any ideas?
Do you have any ideas? And it was Jeremy. He was like, we should probably learn to cook. And I was like, no, what? That's a bad idea. It's an idea. It's not a good one. Like,
try again.
Yeah, try again. And so I basically was like, yeah, you do that. You figure that out.
Oh, funny.
But what happened is I worked from home at the time, and he is in the military. So he was in an office. And by the time he got home to cook, like 6 or so, I was starving.
Totally.
I was like, this isn't going to work. So I then kind of like stepped into that role. And I was like, this is a necessity and it's something I'm not going to love, but I like to eat. And then one day I just remember I was in my kitchen, I was sauteing onions and like butter hit the pan and that
glory.
Smell, glory. And I just was like, I love this. And I was like, what?
Who said that?
Who said? I was like, what do I love? And so I naturally started a food blog. As one does.
It took one onion and a little butter, and you're like, well, obviously this is a calling.
This is what we do. We start a blog. I still didn't really know how to cook either. I was like, but that's how confident I was in myself.
That's awesome.
Like, we'll figure this out.
That's so amazing. And now you have this beautiful book. And I cannot wait to talk about it because I really, really nerded out with your book. I have a question before we go straight to the cook's book. I have got to tell you, I love it when I love to hear experts in their field. And I also triply love it when they didn't start there. So even that conversation with Jeremy, you thought, well, this is going to be a problem. What will you do to solve it? And you ended up to be the girl in that space. We have a lot of people who listen who are at, some point down the road, they think, I'm not sure if this is it. I would love to pivot to something different. And you did.
Yes.
So talk to me about that and how you were brave enough. I mean, it sounds like there was a healthy amount of both self-confidence and naivete. Yes. But in general, you took the plunge and you were ready to do something not in that lane. So what about that?
Oh, that is a wild story because basically what happened is I was working at a nonprofit and I loved it.
Okay.
Like I loved it. I just was like, I will retire from here.
Okay.
I was really, I was growing on my team. I loved it. My story is weird because I feel like, some people will say like, I don't like what I'm doing.
Yes.
So I need it. And I loved what I was doing. I was like, I love this. I loved everything about my job. And the food blog was kind of like a side hustle.
Sure.
But I ended up we did trips at the time. We were doing trips with Christian bloggers, compassion bloggers.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah. So I got connected to all of these bloggers and I would go to the conferences to see, to talk to more bloggers about becoming a compassion blogger. And through that was introduced to an agent who was then like, would you like to write books? And I still was like, maybe on the side, right. Like I'm not leaving compassion.
I love my work. Yeah. Yeah.
I love my job. I was like, I love my job. I love my team. I love who I get to work with. And, basically I ended up signing a contract to write a book, which was my first book, Come and Eat. And I remember the day I signed the contract, I was talking to the editor and she had said to me, I think you need to seriously consider leaving your full-time job and go full force into this lane. And I was like, you have lost your actual mind. Yeah. I have a stable job. Like if this book thing doesn't work out,
I need to eat.
Yeah. I need to, I was like, are you kidding? I don't like, this is stable. This is good. This is
meaningful. It was fulfilling. Yeah.
So meaningful. I really had a mind trip of going from like, my work is to help, eradicating poverty to my work is talking about me in a way. That was a whole situation. Yeah. But anyway, I just was like, she's cuckoo crazy. I'm not doing that. And then I had dinner with Jeremy that night and I was like, you will not believe what my editor said. And he just looked me straight in the eye and he's like, yeah, no, I agree. And I just was like, Jeremy would never, I was like, he would never tell me that it's time to leave this thing that I love so much unless so it was really scary. I think for the first year, I would wake up in the middle of the night, just like, this was the worst idea anyone's ever had. But once you kind of throw yourself fully into something, it's like, you don't really have another, it's like
swim.
Swim. Yep. I better start showing up. Whereas I think if I kept my other job, I would have been like, if I fail, I fail. I have this
interesting.
Yeah.
So that's a funny pairing of both bravery and just you have to.
Yes.
There's not a lot of other options. Also, what I hear from that is that conversations with Jeremy are entirely dangerous. You've got two. We have only been on here for 5 minutes and two life changers, same guy. There's a thread.
There's a thread. I was telling someone the other day, I was like, I always say he has bad ideas. We should learn to cook. And I'm like, but actually they turned out to be pretty good ideas.
So far, you're still talking to him. I think it's working out okay. Okay. Nerd time. The cook's book. I wish I could hold it for everyone to see. They're going to have to look because most of this is audio, but people watch it on YouTube as well. So they will see. This is my excited hand motion. This book is so fun. I was awake at night thinking about this book. And here is why. It's lovely and it's unique. It's beautiful. I mean, it's a beautiful book. And I want to talk about that in just a second. But it's so unique because the format is so unusual. And I cannot wait to hear about how you thought about doing this. So you have already written Come and Eat, which is trade paperback, long form prose. This is a cookbook, but it's like cookbook um, on Happy Juice, because you are stepping into this space of, I don't know how you did this. You are talking to people who are total novices and also people who love to cook already. I am in the former
Yes.
or the latter group. I really love to cook. I learned so much in your book. It was so much fun. You made everything very accessible, but also very, very delicious looking. You say the best way to consume this book is first just to read it all the way through. No one says this about cookbooks.
Yes.
And let us be honest, as friends that we now are, that typically cookbooks, I'm a little scattered. Like I go to a section, get some things out of there. The next day or next week, go somewhere else. This is a very different mojo. So how did you decide to say to cookbook buyers and readers, no, really, you start in the beginning, read through, and then we go back? Talk to me about that.
Basically what happened is, so Come and Eat came out, and it is like, I would call it a food memoir. It's my story of how I fell in love cooking and fell in love bringing people to the table.
Yes.
And my whole emphasis in that was mainly like, let's bring people to the table and worry less about what we're serving them. And that was like my whole goal. And so after the book came out, a lot of people were like, we love that. A lot of people. I had no followers.
Thousands of people, millions of people.
Yeah. I had like a few hundred people who knew me, and they're like, you gotta. They were like, hey, we love the message of your book. Yeah. We believe in it. We want to bring people to our table, but will you teach us how to cook? Because actually knowing how to cook would de-stress us.
100%.
And I wasn't looking at it like that. I was looking at it like, just order pizza, or just order just bring some fruit to the table. And they were like, no, actually a really big hang up is I do want to serve good food. And if you could teach me. And I was like, well, I've never taught someone how to cook before, but let's see how this is going to go down. And so what I did is I sat down and I was like, what are there like basics or techniques that I've learned that I could say to someone, if you knew these things, you could be a confident home cook. Yeah. And so I kind of like outlined all of that. And then I did an online class, and I was like, it was kind of like, let's take some people through this class.
Yeah.
And if they come out of the class and they're like, still hate the kitchen, still don't know what I'm doing. But we did it. And so many people and it was wild. I thought it was going to be mostly novice cooks, but it was a spectrum. Totally. And everybody came out like, oh my gosh. First of all, I needed to go through, I needed to actually have someone tell me, we're going to go A, B, C. Right. We're not going to just like jump around. Go through this way, and every technique would build on each other. So I would teach a technique, and then we would make a recipe that reinforced that technique. Then I would build a technique onto that previous technique, and we'd make a recipe. So now you're like, every technique you learn, the recipe is going to reinforce that. And so that's how I decided to write the cookbook.
You make this sound very easy. And I'm going to say thanks for doing all of that hard work, because the presentation is completely accessible. You're funny. The writing is very funny and engaging and warm, but somehow you hit this middle point of, you know what you're talking about. You're in the expert space. But man, I feel like we're just doing this together. I have never read a cookbook like this. It was so fun to read. And also I want to make everything in it. Well done. That's what I'm saying. And also, what a fascinating thing that you could write to the novice. I'm buying a copy of this for my college daughter, who has been we cook a ton at our house, but there have never been organized lessons. Okay. It's mostly chaos and someone's very hungry and maybe cussing. That's how it's gone so far. And so it's totally a book for her, but I think it's also absolutely a book for people who are reimagining what it looks like to cook in whatever season, right? Or there's this great section about building your kitchen, the kitchen you have. Talk to me about that, because that was fascinating, using what you have and making it work for you.
Oh, yes. That was so important to me. And that's like one of the first parts of the book, because I think as I was learning to cook, I was really looking to a lot of other people to tell me, what do I need to have in my kitchen? What gadgets, what tools? like, oh, I need a really big, pretty island in my kitchen to enjoy cooking. I need the most expensive pots and pans to make the most delicious sauces and seared chicken. And I did go down that path. I bought the things that I was told to buy. I wanted to renovate my kitchen. I bought very expensive things. And I realized like, well, my cooking is still pretty subpar. Like, and now like my kitchen is packed with so many things that I'm never going to use. And so that section in the book, it kind of goes through like, here's everything that I use that I love, and here's why I use it and love it. But you get to decide like what you want to use and what you love. If I say to you, I have a toaster oven and I love my toaster oven, that doesn't mean you have to have a toaster oven. That just means like maybe like do some research, figure out what it is, what it can do for you. And you might in this season of life be like, I don't need a toaster oven right now.
Right.
I was like,
no,
that's okay.
I think that's one of your strengths is telling people to trust themselves. That's what I'm talking about. You say, here's the stuff. I've done the research. This is what's worked for me. I learned to cook systematically, right? I've taught people how to do this like in an order that makes sense. And also now you get to test. Do you have an insect in front of your face?
Did you see that?
I did. It was a very aggressive Midwestern insect.
I was like, do I freak out and scream right now? I was like, so
you may.
patiently being like, please go away.
This is a scream-friendly zone. You emote as you need. That's what I said. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, speaking of a beautiful home that's also insect infested, I didn't know that part. This book is so gorgeous. The photos are gorgeous. The cover, I believe, is Laura Kleinstra. Is she the designer?
Yes. Do you know her?
Oh, I have a cover crush on her. She designed one of my covers, a book called Sugar, and I have been pining for her to come and do more ever since. She's very gifted. The insect wants to land on you, but we're just going to let him do it.
The insect thinks it's ghost. Like, I'm like, I'm invited. Yeah, I was so excited when I was told that was, I like looked at her like back catalog and I was like,
yes,
oh,
it's beautiful. It's beautiful. But I have a question for you. Did you have were those photos all taken in your actual home? Is it your hand filleting chicken?
Yes.
It's you.
Yes.
Great manicure. But also they were in your house. Will you tell all the rest of us who will never have a film crew in our homes? How did that feel?
It wasn't great. Well, basically what happened is when this photo shoot happened when I lived in DC, and we lived in an apartment. We lived in a 900 square foot apartment in DC, and we were trying to figure out, like, we knew that the photo shoot was going to happen with me in it and that I was going to be making the food, and Laura was shooting it. And then Mumtaz, she was the food stylist. She came in and she was styling the food. And so it was like, I knew there was going to be a food photographer, a food stylist, my editor, the person on my marketing team.
Oh my heavens.
And my editor's husband. We're all going to be
you and Laura. And that's a lot of
yes.
people.
Yeah. It was like so many people. I was like, what is happening? Like, we're going to be like standing on top of each other. But when I showed them my apartment, it was like floor to ceiling windows.
Yeah.
Yeah. Windows. So the natural light was like, it was so good. And they were like, that's where we're going to do the first shoot. I had a complete breakdown the night before, because I never done it before. And
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I was like, I don't even know what's happening. I did not realize that there was going to be a food stylist. So I thought I'm going to be cooking. I cooked everything.
All day. So, I need you to talk to me about this. Like the day of with every person in the room, or did you do a lot of prep? How do you do? This is stressing me out. It's stressing me out to think about this.
It was stressing. So I prepped what I could.
Okay.
And then I started and then like they got to my house, I think at like 7 or 8 in the morning. And we ended up very quickly having a system, which once I realized I have a food stylist, that took a bunch of pressure off.
Okay.
Because I thought I'm cooking and I'm styling the food.
Yeah.
And that was like really stressful.
You cook, she makes it pretty. She plates it. Okay.
So it was literally like an assembly line. Dishes were like coming off the stove or out of the oven, and I would just hand them to Mumtaz. She would take it. She would style it. Laura.
Amazing.
And while they're doing that, I'm still in the kitchen cooking. And they would pull me over sometimes and be like, do you like this photo? Do you like these colors? Is this what you're going for?
Wow.
And then my editor and marketer and the other few people in the house, they were like chopping. They were I was like, chop this onion. Chef. Yeah. Jeremy was there. He made sure he was like on like every beverage imaginable. We were like taking espresso shots throughout the day.
Yes, you were.
Water, hydrating. He's making his cocktails because there's a whole cocktail section. So of course, like we made the cocktail and then it would be like, who wants the cocktail? And or even the food.
Everyone
like,
raise your hand. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Jeremy has redeemed all of his dangerous conversations
right?
just by being that person that day.
He really has. He was, and what's funny is he almost didn't take off work. Like I was like, you don't need to take off work. Like, what are you going to do? And I was on a call with my mastermind, literally sobbing, being like, I can't do this. I cannot do this. And because I think it was like 10 dishes a day. And,
oh my gosh.
I
so
know.
This, how many days?
It was a 2-day shoot at my house. And then it was a 3-day shoot at Laura's house. So then later that summer I went to Laura's. I know. But I was
this
like,
is intense. I am so glad you're you're spilling the tea on this because I've wondered this so many times in beautiful cookbooks. Like, how does this actually work? It's a thing.
Oh, it's so much. It's so much. But what I loved about like Jeremy and the team and the team really, everybody pitched in. Like that's everybody awesome. Was like, what do you need me to do? What do you need me to grab? And Laura kind of set me down because I was losing my mind. I mean, she could tell that I was like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Edge.
Yeah. And she set me down and she was like, this food doesn't have to taste good. She's like, we'll make it look pretty. Because I was all, I'm like, maybe it's one thing to make one meal taste good, But I'm like, I have to make 10 meals today. And like, I'm stirring over here while I'm searing over here, while I'm baking over here. And I'm like, something's going to go wrong. And so I think her just telling me like, remember, this is a photo. Like if you forget to salt something. Yeah. She was like, they don't know. They don't know you forgot to salt that meat. They don't know that you actually burnt that. We're going to turn it around. It's not burnt anymore.
Oh, that is a fantastic story. And also good job surviving that, both in your home, your personal space, and then doing 3 more days of it. That's a lot of cooking. I have a question about that, actually. Yeah. Do you, in this season, are you kind of like, I don't ever want to cook again? Or does it ebb and flow after those 5 days? I'm assuming you maybe took a little bit off.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I took a little bit. I mean, we had leftovers forever.
Recommended, yeah.
Forever. Right. And I did kind of go into a cooking slump, which was not great because I still needed to show up on Instagram.
Fascinating.
When you're writing a book, it's so behind scenes, like people don't necessarily know, well, Bri wasn't on Instagram today because she would cook 10 dishes.
Right. Right.
They're like, when is your next recipe? When are you posting your next recipe? When are you sharing your next? So it was, I definitely got burnt out and was like, I need a minute. Yeah.
A couple. Wow. That is so interesting. I have not spent a lot of time in that. Obviously that's not my space of photographing what I'm doing at dinner. Right. And I would think that there must be a little bit of a grind to that every now and then. Like, but here's what I love about you. The other day you posted you had mozzarella sticks and a glass of wine for dinner. This is why we like you. Yes. You are a real person doing real things. And God bless the other people who always have multiple courses a night. But that's not what happens at my house. So you're the every girl, St. Louis.
Yes.
I like it.
I like that. That was super important to me too, because I was like, if I'm feeling burnt out on cooking and it's my job.
Right.
And I do find a lot of joy. I was like, what about the other people? The other people I want to show up for them, or I want to be very like honest. I'm having mozzarella sticks tonight. And you know what? That's a win.
It is a total win. No, I love that. In fact, I love it that you make me feel like that's a great ebb and flow. Like I said, like there are seasons where we're just going to cook our faces off for some people. And some people really, there's a whole section in your book about these are wins and on the table in 30 minutes. And here are some great tips of when you aren't really going to marinate your chicken breasts for 12 hours ahead or your flank steak or whatever. So I love that. Again, you're actually doing this in real life. How do you think coming to cooking after the takeout phase at age 27, how do you think that helps you be who you are? Because the cookbook space in publishing is fairly crowded, right? I mean, there are lots of cookbooks that come out, and yours is such a refreshing switch up. And I wonder if you think about that in terms of you came to it, you didn't grow up baking your own bread. So do you think that's a strength for you?
Oh, I definitely think it is. I especially think it is because I feel like my mom learned to cook this way. I know a lot of people learn to cook it this way, where it was when you grew up in the kitchen, you're just like a pinch of this, a touch of that, taste as you go. And I didn't have that baseline or that foundation.
Right.
So when someone said to me, like, oh, it needs some citrus, I was like, what does that mean? Like, what does that mean? And what is some? Is it like,
Right.
is it a whole grapefruit?
That is a very valid question. That's what
Like,
I'm talking about.
I just didn't. And I was like, okay, no. I think that's what gives me a little bit of an edge or a different approach to cooking is I do want people to get to that place. And that's where I think people do get to that place if they cook through this whole cookbook, where you can taste something and say, oh, it needs a little more salt. Or like you taste it and you immediately know, like, this is what it needs, less of, more of, whatever it is. But it takes some skills and techniques to get to that point.
Right.
And I myself had to learn them first. And that's what I wanted to share with my audience. I was like, I could obviously just write a traditional cookbook that's just all recipes, but that's not what I needed when I was 26. And so I really wanted to write, what did I need when I was learning to cook?
I think you build the confidence of the reader so well. It's a perfect graduated moment. I mean, you do have a lot of love for different kinds of salt. I do as well, but you break it down. I don't actually have a ton of patience to read 12 pages about salt, but you have one.
Yes.
And that will give me all I need. I feel like you're like the friend. It's a really great coffee date where someone says, tell me all I need to know about this. And I cannot do the research. You already did it. Thank you for doing that for us. So, okay, here's a real life question. What are you cooking this week? This is my question. I have an uncle who is a professional chef, and I love it when he comes to our house because he cooks like a real person. You know, I mean, he can do the fancy schmancy, and we can do frisée, and we can do radicchio salad, but really he just does what he wants to eat. And so what does that look like at your house? Like, what are you eating this week?
Oh, well, tonight, what we're eating, at the recording of this, it's Friday.
Okay.
And so we always do Friday night pizza night.
I love it.
We actually have leftover ribs and leftover homemade barbecue sauce. So I think what we're going to do, because I don't really like to reheat a rib.
Yeah, right.
But I'm like, we have this delicious meat. So we're going to make barbecue pizza, and I'm going to shred the meat off the bone. And then we have some candied jalapenos in the refrigerator. I'm all about just like comfort, and even like, I love pizzas on Friday. I love, going into soup season. I love soup on Sunday. Like,
I love it.
I'm just like, what
to love
I love
about
cooking,
that.
but I still also don't want to be in the kitchen for 8 hours.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, unless I'm developing a recipe.
Thanksgiving, or you have a 5-day photo shoot.
Thanksgiving. Yeah, exactly.
You talk about this in the book, but you're thinking about your ribs and the meat that you have that you want to use, but you don't want to heat up a bone. Yes. Fantastic. And you say in the book, cook early. So I'm asking you this at, 2:15 in the afternoon, and you had a very quick answer, ma'am. You were ready. Oh, I know what I'm having tonight. Is that kind of a secret weapon that we could employ better to cook earlier in the day? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, that is my favorite. It's so funny because I didn't really employ that in my life until like 3 years ago, maybe. And what was happening is everybody goes to cook in the kitchen understandably around like 5 or so.
Yeah.
And if you have the ability to cook a little earlier, which I did, I was like, why am I waiting? Someone said this to me, and I thought they said it so well. They're like, it's like someone waiting to start a marathon at 10 p.m. Like, no one's starting a marathon at 10 p.m. They're starting it like bright and early, first thing in the morning. Why are we stepping into our kitchens when we're already hungry? We're already tired. We've already like had the day just like take everything from us.
Yep.
And now we have to bring it together. Like, no. So what I started doing is I started making the full meal, like not just like prepping a few things, although that is really helpful too. Like if you can chop an onion earlier in the day or get kind of your veggies all prepped and ready. I love that. But I was like, I'm just making the full thing. I'm going to make the full thing, whether it's like a casserole or a soup. I just burgers, whatever it is, I prep it all the way to like just the last little cook time. So then when dinner comes, I'm like just reheating a soup, or I'm immediately throwing burgers on the grill, or the casserole is like just finishing in the oven.
I love this.
Game changer.
I don't know why this is such a shift for me, but no one has ever talked about that before. All of my life, my mom was a phenomenal mother and a phenomenal provider and a great cook. And she would she taught violin in our home. And so typically she had a lot of after school slots. So she would she would work right to 6. So, and that's when dinner would start, unless she had something in the slow cooker. But a lot of times she was like either running between lessons. And I think that was the model and it worked. And I just did that with my family. It actually fairly recently started prepping at like 6:20 in the morning, which is a little early. I'm just going to say, for the pungency of a really great garlic clove. But for me, I'm up anyway. I'm doing the thing and getting people to school. And man, by 5:30, I want to kiss my own self. Yes. Because even if something is done, right? Even if I'm not starting from absolute scratch, that is such a help to me. Why have I never done this?
I'm like, why is this same? Like I was like, what is happening? Like,
right.
This is very backwards. Like, we should just, if you could, and I did that with the ribs that I made yesterday. I made the sauce and the spice mixture for the ribs. Yeah. Like when I was drinking my coffee in the morning.
That's the thing.
So it's like, and then when the ribs had to cook for a while, but when it was time to cook the ribs, I didn't have to, I just like, in the oven they go.
We're already ready to go.
We're good.
I love, that is a total life hack. Thank you for putting words to it. You will change lives. Okay, I have a couple other questions for you. I'm wondering how you feel about these different lanes of writer land. So you write a book, it's mostly alone in your pajamas, in my experience, or yoga pants. And it's a kind of you're in your own space. It's a pretty isolating thing to write a book because no one can do that for you. You have to do it on your own. And then people come to your house for photo shoots and you are out in the world talking about the book. You seem like an extrovert. I don't know if that's true or not.
Yes, it is true.
Okay. How do you like those two different lanes? The creation and then the talking about the creation.
Oh, I love the talking about it.
Okay.
The creating, I am an extrovert. So it's actually very draining for me. That work does have to be done, like, well, besides the photo shoot, but the writing of it, the recipe developing of it, it was all very isolating and extremely draining. And so I think it took so much out of me, but, and as you don't know if people are going to like it.
That's
so you're
like,
Ruth. I put so much energy and time and like everything. I put my whole self into this thing, and it might come out into the world and people will be like, no, thanks. Not for me. And so I think So I think it being, when it's being in the world and seeing people react to it has restored my like energy and motivation.
Yeah.
Whereas before I was like, should I talk about this thing?
Totally. It's a soul sucking. Yeah. Well, and you're writing in a very communal space. You are writing things to be shared. You are not making fabulous homemade salsa for you to eat the whole thing. I mean, sometimes we do, but in general, even the purpose of your writing is communal. So that must feel really strange that you're doing it by yourself, but for a community.
Yes. Oh yeah. It's like such a messes with the mind. Yeah,
for sure. Did you test recipes all the time with you and Jeremy? Did you get sick of that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I always wonder about that with cookbook people. Like, by the end, are they like, I can't make one more thing?
I know. Someone had asked me, they were like, will you make your loaded baked potato soup? And I was like, no. I just said no. I was like, I made that like 5 times this week. I'm not doing it. But the really cool thing, which helped immensely, is I asked my community to recipe test for me. So like I got the recipes to where I was like, I think this is exactly how this recipe should go. And I have a community called the Cooks Club, and I asked them, will you recipe test? And if you recipe test, your name will be in the book. And they signed up. So that was really helpful too, because especially with recipe reading,
Yeah.
I had to like keep going back to like, but would 26-year-old Bri know what you meant when you said that?
Right.
Like,
Right.
and so some of my recipe testers came back and they said, I do not know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
they helped me be like, oh, right, I didn't explain that. Or I didn't, like, I need to be more visual with that.
Yeah. That's so fun. And also, if you ever do this again, I want to be in that club. And you don't even
Yes.
have to put my name in the book. I just want to
Oh,
cook.
I love that.
Okay,
love
I
that.
have questions now that it's out. You said, you write it, isolating out, it's out in the world. What kinds of feedback are you getting back from real human beings who are really making things that you made up in your head? Is it fun?
It's so fun. I kind of could tell I was like bracing myself
Yeah,
the day it came out, like the reviews and I'm just like
totally.
bracing myself. I've heard like nightmares from other cookbook authors that were like, didn't put the bake time on that recipe.
Oh.
So people are literally like, how long? Like, and so I was just like bracing myself. I'm like, oh my gosh. But what has been the most fun is I've had so many people reach out and say, I am in a major cooking rut and your book just like kicked me right out of it.
Awesome.
And that is so what I wanted. Like I wanted someone to pick up my cookbook and re-experience the joy of cooking and feel like I'm doing this. Like I want to cook. This is a recipe I actually want to cook.
Totally.
And so that has been like the biggest gift.
That's so fun. What a fun thing. Keep a file of all the things you're hearing that are so great because that can give you oxygen for a long time. I'm wondering just real quickly, you are a person of faith. You've written
Yes.
about that and spoken about that. How does that intersect with being a cookbook author? That's a wide open question, honey. You can take it wherever you want.
I love it so much. I love that question. I write a lot about my faith in Come and Eat and really seeing how Jesus like communed with people, the community he created, always being around a meal with a meal. A meal was there somehow or was about to be there. And so when I wrote Come and Eat, I really explored like this is something that was really important to Jesus and like he modeled it for us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we should lean into that. I want to lean into that. And after people started asking me like, well, will you teach us how to cook? Which was completely different. I thought there was many more food memoirs. I thought if I write another book, it's going to be another food memoir, not a cookbook.
Interesting.
And so when that happened, I was like, oh, I want to write a cookbook. And I really wanted to, my faith is very much like the door is always open and all are welcome and come to my table and eat my food and
you are
no
welcome
questions
here.
asked.
Yep.
You are welcome here.
Mm-hmm.
So happy you're here. And so when I wrote the cookbook, I knew, and I did sit down with my publishing house, which is a Christian publishing house. And I told them before I signed the contract, I said, there will be no faith in this cookbook.
Right.
Like, I didn't want to confuse. I didn't want to be like, and this is what salt is. And Jesus said, you are salt of the earth. Like I
Sorry.
just was like,
I made that was not an intentional scowl that just came on my, I'm sure there's a place for that, but yeah, that would feel a little bit forced to me.
A little bit forced.
Yeah.
Like, cause I was like, that is not when I teach people how to cook. I am not stopping
you don't pause
to say
and quote Matthew. Weird.
Exactly. I was like, people who follow my content, they will know at some point, this is a person of faith because
Right.
I am a person of faith,
Right.
but there's not even like one hint of it in this book. And it's because I was like, I just want to bring the practical art of cooking.
Right.
Let's just do that.
Let's just have that be what it is.
Yes.
I wrote a bunch of novels at one point in my life, and I was a weirdo in both Christian circles and mainstream circles. My faith is also super important to me, but I got some pushback from Christian publishers that would want like a conversion scene in every novel, which was so strange to me. And just what you're talking about, a very forced, sometimes life isn't a conversion scene. And
Right.
oftentimes our experience with faith in God is a very meandering, all over the place, tug and pull and dance. And it's not just one phenomenal moment when everything clicks and makes sense. So I'm glad you pushed back. I don't know if you had to push, but I'm glad you said there will not be references to wine in the wine section,
Right.
like the body of Christ. There is a place for talking for that, but I actually really love it that really what you're doing is the most invitational Christian thing to do, which is to set this beautiful table, open your doors and say, come, I'd love to hang out with you.
So that's exactly what I was hoping for. I was like, I'm not trying to be, I'm not trying to be sneaky. Like you get to the end of the book and it's like, and now I would like to talk. It's like, no, this is a book about cooking.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah. And I hope you do it. And I hope you love it. And I hope you have a really beautiful time in your home. And obviously great conversations will go to beautiful places. But first, let's have guac.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm into
it.
Okay. What is next for you? I hate to even ask that question, Bri, because it feels insensitive. You're in a coma of new release land. But what do you think is next? What's making you excited after a nap?
I know, a nap. Yeah.
Yep.
I think that what is next is a YouTube channel.
Okay.
I have a lot. I think food is so visual. And I actually was really reluctant to write this book because it is so technique heavy.
Okay.
But I was nervous that it wasn't going to come through in the written work. Well, also a lot of publishing houses also felt that way. They were like,
fascinating.
That's best done in video, you know?
Oh, you did it.
Yeah.
Nope, you did it. They were wrong.
Thank you.
Yeah.
They were wrong. Mm-hmm. So, but I am like, I still want to inspire people to find joy and confidence in the kitchen. I still have so many techniques that I would love to teach. And so I think not moving away from Instagram as in I'm not going to be there, but giving people those on Instagram, you can do like the quick cuts. And then people are like, what'd you just do to that chicken?
How'd that happen? Yeah.
And I want to show, so I think I'm going to do more long form videos of cooking.
I love that answer. And I am subscribing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let me know. I'm super excited about it. Okay. Last question that I ask all of our guests. It is a question about books. So it's a two-parter. One, what is a book, maybe in your instance, a cookbook, but any book that you return to over and over again, you maybe gift to people or you encourage people to read. It could be very old. We are fans of long ago titles here. So that's part one. And then what's a book or cookbook or experience that you are excited about that's coming around the bend?
Ooh, that's a good question. Okay. The book, I can see the book. Can I go grab the book?
You totally can go grab it. I would love it. All correct titles. That's what we like.
Oh my gosh.
Did you get it?
I couldn't remember the title.
I get this. It's it's kind of an alarming question. I should let people know I'm going to do that on the front end. That's awesome.
Thank you for letting. I love books so much, so that I'm also like all of them. I go to all of them.
Same. This would be actually a horrible question if someone asked me this question. So I'm so glad to just punt it to you. Yes. What is it? What's the book? Is this the book you would recommend often?
I recommend this book so much. And it is a faith-based book. It's Falling Upward by Richard Rohr.
Okay, I hear of this.
I love it so much because I feel like it continues to kind of meet me in the flow of my faith.
Okay.
Awesome. There's been a long time where I was like, things are like this. And so whenever someone's like, I'm feeling, I have questions or I'm feeling this way, I feel like it's a good book that it doesn't necessarily say like, do this or don't do that, or it's this way or it's not this way. It invites like, let's think about it. Let's talk about it.
Meets you where you are on that particular moment. Great.
Yes.
Falling upward.
Yes.
Okay,
so good.
Great. And what about something you're looking forward to reading for the first time?
Ooh.
Or a cookbook, or, it's wide open. Anything on the list?
No, there's like so many on the list.
Okay. Is that the trouble? I didn't know if you were thinking, no, not really. You're sifting. That's the sifting phase.
I'm sifting because I'm like, there's so many. I am looking forward to. Oh, I know. Well, I don't know, but I love crime. You love. Imagine that soundbite.
I love crime.
I love crime.
What's next for me is to become a criminal.
I do know my way around my knives, but no, I love like murder. Like, well, wait.
I love murder? Is that
murder mysteries? Like this is Okay. Like murder mysteries, crime podcasts.
Totally. Yes. I'm in the same camp. I don't know that I would say I love murder.
No.
But I hear where you're going.
I don't love murder. Murder is so bad. It's very bad.
In real life.
Mysteries. In real life. Murder mysteries or like crime podcasts. Totally. And there is, so I'm trying to like a little bit get into Stephen King.
Okay, this is a bold choice.
I know. I don't know if I can do, because Stephen King is a little bit more like paranormal like and ghosts.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, but I read one book of his that was good. That wasn't that way. And so he just came out with a new book called Holly that I feel like I might be able to, like, I like those edge of your seat, what's going on.
Yeah.
You know,
you're brave.
Something to take me completely away from the cookies.
Totally out of your normal. No, that's fantastic. And you are entering into fall. And so I feel like there's room for maybe a spooky story at night.
Yeah. Just like a cozy little, well, I don't know if cozy is the right word.
Terrifying, murderous moment.
Can't fall asleep, whatever.
Will cause some real problems the next day, but it's fine. It'll be great, entertaining, keep the knives away.
Exactly.
Bri McKoy, thank you for joining me. This was a total delight.
I loved it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you for writing a great book. I hope you sell a gazillion copies, and I hope you are doing what you mean to do. It sure worked with me, infusing confidence and joy in every kitchen. What a beautiful calling, and you're doing it great. Well done.
Thank you so much.